Welcome to the Inspiring Illustrations channel. Who were the Ishmaelites? The story of Ishmael's descendants in the Bible. The Ishmaelites, frequently mentioned in connection with the Israelites in biblical narratives, have a rich and complex history that begins with Ishmael, the son of Abraham. To fully understand their role in biblical history and their relationship with the Israelites, we must closely examine Ishmael's life, his descendants, and the eventual formation of the Ishmaelite people. This exploration provides valuable insights into the early biblical world and the intricate relationships between various peoples descended from Abraham. In this video, we'll embark on a fascinating journey through the history of the Ishmaelites. We'll uncover everything the Bible reveals about these people, tracing their path from their origins to their ultimate fate. Along the way, we'll unravel the complexities of their relationship with the Israelites and their significant role in biblical history. Before we dive in, I'd like to extend a warm invitation to our new viewers. Please subscribe to our channel and activate notifications to ensure you don't miss any of our in-depth Bible studies. The name Ishmael carries deep significance, meaning God hears. This name reflects God's intervention in Hagar's life when she fled from Sarah's mistreatment. A pivotal passage in Genesis chapter 16, verses 10 through 12 sets the stage for the future of Ishmael's descendants. I will so increase your descendants that they will be too numerous to count. You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. This prophecy would profoundly shape the destiny of the Ishmaelites, characterizing them as a nomadic and independent people. While often in opposition to the Israelites, they were never forgotten by God. This divine promise and warning would echo throughout their history, influencing their interactions with other nations and their role in the biblical narrative. The promise to Abraham and the birth of Ishmael. The story of Ishmael is inextricably linked to God's covenant promise to Abraham, then known as Abram, that he would become the father of many nations. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. However, this promise was complicated by the fact that Abram's wife Sarai, later Sarah, was barren. In her desperation to provide Abram with an heir, Sarai made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. She gave her Egyptian maidservant, Hagar, to Abram as a surrogate. This practice, while common in ancient Mesopotamian culture, set in motion a series of events that would shape the course of biblical history. Hagar conceived, and Ishmael was born when Abram was 86 years old. However, this birth brought conflict rather than joy to Abram's household. As soon as Hagar became pregnant, tension arose between her and Sarai. Hagar began to look down on Sarai, who in turn mistreated her, ultimately causing Hagar to flee into the desert. It was in this moment of crisis that God intervened. By a spring in the desert, the angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar with a message of both instruction and promise. The angel told Hagar to return to Sarai and submit to her, but also delivered a profound prophecy concerning her unborn child. This divine encounter not only ensured Ishmael's birth, but also foretold the future of his descendants. The prophecy about Ishmael was twofold. On one hand, it promised that he would become the father of a great nation, echoing God's promise to Abraham. On the other hand, it foretold a life of conflict for Ishmael and his descendants. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. Genesis chapter 16, verse 12. This prophecy would come to characterize the Ishmaelites as a people often at odds with their neighbors, including their Israelite relatives. Ishmael's birth represents a complex moment in biblical history. It demonstrates God's mercy and faithfulness to his promises, even in circumstances that seem to contradict his plan. At the same time, it marks the beginning of a long-standing conflict between the descendants of Abraham through different lineages. The rivalry between Ishmael's line and that of Isaac, born later as the child of promise, would shape much of the subsequent biblical narrative and continue to have repercussions throughout history. In our next segment, we'll explore how this prophecy played out in the lives of the Ishmaelites, their interactions with the Israelites, and their lasting impact on biblical and Middle Eastern history. The birth of Isaac and the expulsion of Hagar and Ishmael, Genesis 21. Although Ishmael was Abraham's first son, he was not the child of the covenant promise that God made to Abraham. Years later, when Abraham was 100 years old, Sarah gave birth to Isaac, the son God had promised all along, Genesis 21, verses 1 through 3. This event solidified the distinction between Isaac, the son of promise, and Ishmael. Tension in Abraham's household reached a boiling point when Isaac was weaned. During a feast to celebrate the occasion, Sarah noticed Ishmael, now a teenager, mocking Isaac. Concerned for her own son's inheritance, Sarah demanded that Abraham send Hagar and Ishmael away, saying, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Abraham was distressed by this demand because Ishmael was still his son, but God reassured him, saying, "Do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring." Thus, Hagar and Ishmael were sent into the desert with only some food and water. When the provisions ran out, Hagar, fearing that Ishmael would die, sat down and wept. But once again, God intervened. An angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar, reminding her of the promise that Ishmael would become the father of a great nation. God opened Hagar's eyes to a well of water, saving them from death. Ishmael survived and thrived, eventually settling in the wilderness of Paran, where he became an archer. His mother arranged for him to marry an Egyptian woman, and from there, his descendants grew into the powerful Ishmaelite people. The expulsion of Ishmael and Hagar, while painful, was part of God's broader plan. Although Ishmael was not the child of the covenant, God's promise to him remained intact, and his descendants would become numerous and significant in the biblical narrative. Ishmael's descendants, a nomadic and influential people, Genesis 25. As promised by God, Ishmael became the father of a great nation. Genesis 25, verses 13 through 16, lists the names of Ishmael's 12 sons, who became the leaders of 12 tribes, much like the 12 tribes of Israel descended from Isaac. These tribes spread across the region, living as nomads and traders. They were known for their skill with the bow and their independent, desert-dwelling lifestyle. The region they occupied extended from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt, as you go toward Assyria, and they lived in hostility toward all their brothers. Genesis 25, verse 18. The Ishmaelites are often associated with other nomadic tribes, such as the Midianites. In fact, the Bible sometimes uses these terms interchangeably, as seen in the story of Joseph, where a group of Ishmaelites and Midianites is responsible for transporting Joseph to Egypt after his brothers sold him into slavery. Genesis 37, verses 25 through 28. This indicates that the term Ishmaelites may have been used broadly to describe various desert-dwelling peoples in the region. The Ishmaelites were known for their wealth and trade. Genesis chapter 37, verse 25 describes how they carried spices, balm, and myrrh on their camels, traveling in caravans between Gilead and Egypt. This shows that the Ishmaelites played a significant role in the ancient Near Eastern economy, facilitating trade between major civilizations like Egypt and Mesopotamia. The Ishmaelites were not just an antagonistic group to the Israelites, but also a key part of the regional economy and culture. Their nomadic lifestyle, skill in warfare, and extensive trade networks made them an influential people in the ancient Near East. Conflict and coexistence. The Ishmaelites in biblical history. The relationship between the Ishmaelites and the Israelites was complicated. On the one hand, they were distant relatives, both descended from Abraham. On the other hand, the prophecy that Ishmael's hand would be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, Genesis chapter 16, verse 12, played out in the recurring hostilities between their descendants. One notable example of this conflict is found in the book of Judges. During the time of Gideon, the Israelites faced oppression from a coalition of nomadic tribes, including the Midianites and Ishmaelites. When Gideon led Israel to victory over these tribes, the Israelites collected golden earrings from the defeated Ishmaelites as spoils of war, indicating the wealth of their enemies. Judges chapter 8, verses 24 through 26. This story highlights the Ishmaelites' prominence in the region and their role as adversaries of Israel. Despite the conflict, there were also instances of coexistence and intermarriage between the Ishmaelites and the Israelites. One such example is Esau, the brother of Jacob, who married a daughter of Ishmael, Genesis chapter 28, verse 9. This intermarriage shows that, although the two groups often clashed, their relationship was not always adversarial. Over time, the Ishmaelites became intertwined with other nomadic groups, making it difficult to trace their distinct identity in later history. The Ishmaelites' relationship with the Israelites was marked by both conflict and kinship. They were not merely enemies but also shared blood ties and moments of coexistence, adding complexity to their role in biblical history. The Ishmaelites' legacy and the question of their modern identity. The legacy of the Ishmaelites extends beyond the biblical period. Many Arab peoples today trace their lineage back to Ishmael, considering themselves his descendants. In Islamic tradition, Ishmael is regarded as a prophet and an ancestor of the Prophet Muhammad, further cementing his significance in the religious and cultural history of the Middle East. In the Bible, the Ishmaelites are portrayed as a people who, despite living outside of God's covenant with Isaac, were still part of God's plan. The prophecy that Ishmael would father a great nation was fulfilled, not just in terms of population but also in terms of influence. The Ishmaelites were known for their wealth, their independence, and their significant role in the region's trade and economy. However, the Bible does not provide a detailed account of what happened to the Ishmaelites after the events described in Genesis and Judges. As the biblical narrative shifts focus to the Israelites and their covenant relationship with God, the Ishmaelites fade from view. Nevertheless, their descendants are believed to have continued to play a role in the ancient Near East, and their legacy persists in the cultural memory of the Arab world. The Ishmaelites' legacy is one of both historical and theological significance. Although they were not part of the covenant through Isaac, they were still a great nation, and their influence continues to be felt in modern traditions, particularly in the Arab world. Conclusion. The story of the Ishmaelites is one of complexity, conflict, and promise. As descendants of Abraham, they shared in his legacy, yet their role in biblical history often placed them in opposition to the Israelites. From their origin in the conflict between Sarah and Hagar to their development as a powerful nomadic people, the Ishmaelites were both a part of and apart from the covenant community of Israel. Their story reminds us of the broader scope of God's plan, which included not only the Israelites but also other nations descended from Abraham. While Ishmael was not the child of promise, he and his descendants were still recipients of God's care and blessing, and their legacy continues to echo through history.